Welcome back. Attorney General Josh Kaul making it official. He won't run for governor, but instead seek a third term as the state's Democrat Attorney General. It leaves former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes telling us in recent days he's, quote, strongly considering a bid. Barnes would join a growing list of Democrats already in the race.
And it comes as Democrats in the state Senate are now campaigning to flip that chamber with new legislative maps. The Senate's top Democrat, Dianne Hesselbein, all at the helm.
To working families all across Wisconsin.
State Senator Dianne Hesselbein has just more than a year leading Democrats' push to regain control of the state Senate.
To flip at least 2 Republican-held seats and win back a majority in the state Senate for the first time in 10 years.
The Democrats' plan targets 3 Senate districts currently held by Republicans and redrawn with new legislative maps, all with Democratic candidates already running.
How has fundraising looked just in terms of Democratic donors looking to invest in the Senate when we have other statewide races?
So what we're being told time and time again by a lot of people is the Senate Democrats are the most flippable chamber that we're going to be having in the entire United States. And people are super excited about that opportunity, so phone calls keep coming in.
The entire country?
In the entire country, people are telling us this is the most flippable chamber in the entire country.
In these districts, will these Senate candidates, will they need Trump voters to vote for them in order to win?
I believe that will happen. I don't believe that's the case because that's why we're really focusing on those areas where Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and Tony Evers won. That's what's happened in those districts, and we expect if the Democrats come out to vote, we'll be victorious.
So you're not going to try to woo Trump voters or maybe swing voters in the state? Let's say they voted for Trump, Biden, and Trump again.
I believe we're going to be sticking to our core message and making sure that Democrats get out to vote because we have a policy agenda. We have the people that are going to be running and doing a great job.
How important is it who is the candidate for governor on the Democratic side?
I think it's important. I'm really excited about all these candidates. It's one of those rare things. I've been around for a while, so I've served with most of them. And so I've seen their chops and what they're made of, and I'm excited as this primary moves forward.
Is there a candidate you would like to be at the top of the ticket?
No, I think they're all great. I'm looking forward to seeing who that is.
Do you plan to endorse before?
I do not plan on endorsing
Why
in
not?
this race. I have too many friends in this race, and
Yeah.
I've served with a lot of them, as I just mentioned, and I think a lot of them bring things to the field, so I'm looking forward to this primarying and seeing what their vision is for the state of Wisconsin.
What do you think the landscape looks like just when you look at the Democratic candidates? Is this going to be a race to the left in this primary, and how does that impact what you're trying to do in the state Senate?
I don't think it will be a race to the left. I think they're all going to be bringing forth their policy ideas and who they are and what they've accomplished in various roles that they've had, and then they'll be, standing in what they've done.
In terms of medical marijuana, there was a new Republican bill unveiled. Speaker Voss recently told us it's not going to pass the assembly. The governor told us he would likely sign it if it got to him. Where are you on that?
So I'm actually having conversations with Senator Testin about that bill and we worked together years ago on a medical marijuana bill, and he unfortunately went with his version this time, but I had some changes that I would need to make. So we're having ongoing conversations. I'm not sure where that bill is going to land, but once again, I have an open door policy, so I'm hoping maybe we can get something done.
Are they big changes? Give us a little insight on what you're looking for.
I'm going to keep those conversations between Senator Testin and myself.
Okay. Are the conversations ongoing, fair to say?
Yes, they are. And I think it's unfortunate that Robin Voss said that it was not going to happen in the state assembly. I think when people are willing to work together, you got to give things a fair shake and actually have a public hearing and hear from the people of the state of Wisconsin.
We've heard a number of the Democratic candidates vary on their position on taxes, whether we've had some say we need to for sure tax billionaires and corporations. We've had others like Missy Hughes who say we need to focus a little more on the economy. What would your approach be as a state senator depending on who the governor is?
I think we can do both. I do think we need to grow the economy, but I do believe everybody should pay their fair share in taxes.
Is that a provision that senators will campaign on over the next year?
Probably.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you feel some pressure though to flip the Senate given your position?
Well, of course. I think everyone looks at the leader to see what they can do, but I'm really happy. I've been doing this a long time, and if I didn't believe that we'd have the chance to flip this chamber, I would no longer be doing this.
All right, up next, election bill changes.